Let's quickly have a conversation about how to grow your podcast audience organically. So the keyword here is organically. So here are the steps I want you to really think about. So first, you need to prep for launch. So when we talk about launching, you need to understand it's important to really have a clear idea about your target audience, right? So you want to think about the age bracket that your target audience is in. What are their interests? Where do they live? What's the sense of humor like? What kind of job do they have? So we got to think about geography, demographics, personality, and so on and so forth. It's important to create a listener persona so you have a clear idea how to actually craft your podcast. And why would they listen to your podcast? That's an important element. Okay, when we talk about prepping for lunch, you need to really pay attention to why would someone listen to your podcast? What kind of value are you adding to the whole populace here? Because you need to understand, you have thousands, if not millions, of podcasts available on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts or even Google Podcasts. The thing is, why should they come to you? So what kind of value are you adding? And you need to create a podcast website. See, the whole thing here is that if you're trying to draw the right type of listeners to your podcast, especially if you're trying to grow your podcast audience organically, having a website really will be really helpful. I'm not talking here about having a landing page. A landing page is great for CTAs, for calls to actions, and all kinds of engagement tactics. But if you're trying to have something more permanent, you want to have a more permanent place to sort of coalesce your target audience, then having a website is really great. And the thing here is that it's not just about having any kind of website. You don't have to spend a lot of cash for that. You have a lot of websites nowadays. You have free website builders. You have some want you to pay $10 or $15 a month. So if you are in this podcast game for the long run, having a podcast website is a great strategy. And you can also actually solidify your audience. You can retain your audience by having a lead magnet where you can collect email addresses, where you can again talk about using your audience for not just in terms of them listening to you, but also you can share with them news. You can share ebooks. You can share all kinds of stuff. It's all about monetizing your content. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. We're having a quick convo today about how to grow your podcast audience organically. Another steps that really works if you are trying to grow your audience, your podcast audience organically, is to submit your show to every podcast app and directory. So what we're talking about when we talk about podcast apps and directories, not all apps and directories are created equal. First of all, when you talk about directories, you have Apple Podcast and the Spotify Podcast are the top two, and then you have a distant three. You have Google Podcast. And then you have a little one. You can have Stitcher. You can have iTunes, iHeartRadio, and so on and so forth. So it's really important to focus on the top two. And when we talk about podcasting, we love to talk about the Pareto rule. So 80-20. So 20% of podcast directories make up 80% of the traffic. So those 20% being Apple Podcast and Spotify. And one thing I want to say also is that you have to be really careful about how you submit your podcast to those directories. You want to follow the rules. You might have to do some legwork to read the rules, to read their submission requirements. So make sure that you do this, and you do this as soon as possible. And again, make sure that you also submit your RSS feed as you actually when you actually submit your podcast. Number 4, you want to leverage the power of interviewees, like your guests, right? So the thing is, when you're trying to, if you interview folks, especially if the guest is kind of known, even if the guest is not known, you can still parlay the interview into something really big. It's all about using you can use the interviewee, the guest, many ways. Number 1, you can ask the guest to actually spread the buzz around your podcast. So basically, you're asking the guest himself or herself to basically again promote the show on your behalf. That's number 1. Number 2, folks who are searching for that specific guest will find your podcast and will maybe subscribe become a listener. That's number two. Number three, you have to really play like in tandem with the search engines also. So if you are targeting very specific keywords, what will happen here is that when you invite that guest comes not only with his or her name, but that guest also comes with him or her a series of keywords. So people are searching for that keyword. Chances are they might actually find your podcast. So this is really powerful, very important. So when we talk about leveraging the power of interviewees, you want to provide each new guest with a press kit containing things like quotes and clips from the recording, social media post ideas, complete with images, videos, and any hashtags you want them to use, your podcast logo and or artwork, and unique URL to your website. And this is really good. And by the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We're having a conversation about how to grow your podcast audience organically. If you want to grow your audience organically, you want to use a CTA in every episode. I say every episode. Now, the CTA doesn't have to be the same, but you need to have a CTA. Don't use two, only use one. So don't forget to leverage the power of your own audience. You'll be surprised of how many of your listeners will be willing to take actions if you just ask. Every podcast episode is a chance to mobilize your audience. So include a call to action somewhere in the episode asking listeners to do things like subscribe to, rate, and review your show on their podcast app. So this helps you get discovered by other users of that app. Tweet their questions at you. This helps with visibility on social media. And join your show's Facebook group. So this helps create a community around your show. Essentially, each call to action should ask your audience to take a specific yet easy action to help get the word out about your show and develop an active, positive community around it. If you want to grow your podcast audience organically, you want to optimize for search. So one key to growing your podcast here is you want to make it as easy as possible for new listeners to find, right? So while there are many SEO tricks to ranking higher in search results for your website, you can also optimize your podcast itself to be more discoverable across all podcast platforms. So there is a place for creativity, but do not sacrifice utility just for witty copy. So you want to write an informative podcast description that convinces new visitors to try the show. Includes keywords and information on the content of the episode, right? You want to reference your credentials and those of your guests. And to make things easier for our listeners, include timestamps for different segments of your show. So this is kind of cool. And the thing I want to say also is that each episode title should be also informative, clearly describing the episode's topic, event, and or guest name. And don't just use generic numbers like B2B podcast or rely on clickbaity titles. Think about what people will actually search for. For example, business advice, productivity, meditation, and so on and so forth. You want to add value. That's really where the juice is at. You want to add value. Try to maximize your show's reach with video. See, the thing here is that, yes, you're thinking, well, we're talking about podcasting. Yes, but podcasting is an audio medium, but you can actually convert your audio into a video. The thing here is that you can actually start a channel on YouTube, for instance. And the cool thing about YouTube is YouTube now has even a section for podcast. This is just fantastically. Now, with the oversaturation of podcasts vying for listeners' attention, video podcasts stand out from the crowd more easily. YouTube is also pushing more towards podcast, and with a new podcast page that I just spoke about. So here is a decision time for you. You want to consider taking videos of your host and guests as they record so that you can share full-length episodes on YouTube and promotional video clips on social media. So by adding a video element, you can open up your show to more platforms and potentially tap into a new audience base. Who knows? The next thing I want you to do here is to network on social media. See, the thing is, you probably know that your show needs its own social media account. But remember that your social media platform should be more about your show and more about sharing episodes and also engaging with your audience, right? To maximize your reach and grow your podcast, you must network and build a community online. So this is kind of important. And so one thing I want to say here is that you need to understand things are not going to happen overnight. Okay. The things take time, but you need to pick the right strategy. So here is a pick for you. You need to ask yourself, what is the strategy I need to have to actually survive in the long run online, on social media, or even offline? The bottom line here is that if you have the right community and you are feeding that community with the right type of info, if you're adding value, that's the key word here. If you're adding value, then chances are you are going to grow over time. Boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We're having a conversation about how to grow your podcast audience organically. The next thing I want you to do here is to cross-promote with other podcasts. See, once you have built a modest listenership, do not underestimate the power of cross-promotion. So one easy way to promote your podcast is to appear on a similar podcast as a guest. You want to demonstrate your unique expertise and conversational style to a whole new audience, and you may find yourself with a truckload of new subscribers. And it works the other way too. You want to invite other podcasters in your niche to guest on your show, and basically you can bet that they will promote that episode to their fans. You'll each help each other grow your audience base, all while creating unique and exciting content for your own subscribers. So this is really good. So here is the approach I want you to think about. Of course, to be successful at cross promotion, you have to offer real value to your peers, listeners. Don't just reach out to every podcasters you can find and ask them to promote your show or have you on as a guest. Right? Partnering with other podcasts starts with laying the groundwork by integrating yourself into the podcast community. So, it's not about just trying to razzle dazzle people here. No, it's about offering real value. Be supportive of others instead of being a working sales page for yourself, and demonstrate your expertise and ability to bring value to any podcast where you appear. So this is kind of important. And so if you do this, if you think about adding value over time, you will see that you will be rewarded big time. And you also need to create a repeatable marketing process. The whole thing here is that you need to actually think of this with a long run, with a let's say a long-term mindset here. And so promoting your show online is more manageable when following a regular post-production workflow. For instance, your marketing process might include the following: turn the episode into a blog page on your website, including show notes and or a transcription. Send a press kit to each remote interview guest. You can write 5 tweets and 3 Facebook posts promoting the episode. You can create an audiogram or video clip for each social post. You can notify your email subscribers and class promotion partners about the new episode so they can listen and share. So every podcaster's post-production marketing workflow looks different. So you want to set up a reliable process that works for you and ensures no new episodes go unnoticed. Okay, this is an important element here. Here is a bonus I want to share with you. How do you increase engagement with your audience? The bottom line here is that you need to be in a situation where you're having an engaged audience, because if you want to grow your podcast audience organically, you need to engage them. If you are not able to engage your audience, you're not going to grow no matter what. It doesn't matter if you spend 10 years doing the same thing, you're not going to grow. Okay, so if you're ready for more advanced tips to grow your podcast, try the following. So number 1, you want to try to run context and giveaways. Because see, the thing is, everybody loves free stuff anyway, right? Your listeners love free stuff. I love free stuff. You love free stuff yourself. So your listeners might be willing to take a specific action, like leave a review on Apple Podcast, for instance, if they are likely to win free stuff out of the deal. And you can also try paid advertising. So, but this requires some budget though. If you have the resources, if you have the budget, you can purchase ad space on other podcasts that your target audience already listens to. So be sure to purchase at least a month of ad spots to ensure your ads have a maximal effect. You can also buy Google or social media ads to target potential listeners. Again, it's all about consistency here though. And don't actually just do one thing and just wait for like a instant success. It doesn't happen that way. And every now and then go live. Things like live streaming and accepting live call-ins encourage real-time conversations with your audience and boost listener engagement. See, the bottom line here is that if you want to grow, people have to see you. People have to be used to you, right? It takes time. And you can also ask your audience for input. The whole thing is, don't be shy here. It's not about just, being like, I'm just like holier than thou or whatever. No. Try to bring yourself to your audience's level and share conversations. Do not be afraid to ask your audience what they want to hear more of. Post on social media or make an announcement on your show asking for feedback. You'll be really surprised how many great ideas you'll receive that way. Okay. And another way to actually have a more engaged audience is to start an email newsletter. So once you're ready, branch out into other content channels. Email marketing is a great way to provide valuable, interesting content to your audience base. And having an email list means you are primed to start building up multiple revenue streams by selling merch, paid content, and courses. This is totally great. Okay. And you can use tools like MailChimp and Constant Contact to build an email list and schedule email marketing campaigns. Let me give you a few pro tips before we close to this conversation. So if you're trying to really grow your podcast audience organically, you need to think about where you should post your podcast, right? Because the location, the real estate where your podcast is, like the real estate on which your podcast is sitting, will play an important role in promoting your podcast success down the road. So to maximize your show's reach, you should submit your podcast RSS feed to as many podcast directories as possible. So we have like Apple Podcasts, for instance. You have Spotify, you have Google Podcast, you have Stitcher, TuneIn, Amazon Music, and Audible. You have iHeartRadio, you have Podchaser. And the best day to release a podcast depends on your target audience. And so usually if you have an audience that's more business focused, then releasing things during the week, maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be better. But if you have a podcast that revolves around leisure or things you can do from home, it's just better to do things on the weekends. Okay. And now the best time will depend upon the geography of your audience. If your audience reacts more in the morning or in the evening, it really depends on you. And so the bottom line is, if you are trying to make your podcast more popular, just think about time. Do a few things consistently and you will grow over time. Do not expect stuff to happen overnight. Nothing good happens overnight anyway. So you want to take the time that it takes. And if you were to think about how long a podcast takes to grow, there are no shortcuts to building a podcast audience. Generally, you can expect the whole thing to take at least 6 months to see a significant uptick in your podcast downloads. And so it's important to do things consistently, to be committed, and to also have a vision. In other words, you have to do things consistently, but you also have to be committed and have a vision, in the sense that when there will be moments when you could be discouraged, like not seeing any traction. This could be really discouraging. But if you have a goal in mind and you have the vision to sort of drive you, then you are able to be in a position where you can reach your goal as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I shared with you how to grow your podcast audience organically. So I gave you the steps you need to follow. I give you a bonus, and I give you a few pro tips you need to follow to actually reach your goal as soon as possible. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you another time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.